Well, compared to the crowds of the main Yosemite attractions, if you go to some of the backcountry stuff, you just don't see anybody. And I'm gonna record the rest of it without my pack on. Alright, so I parked at the Tamarack Creek campground, and I'm about almost 2 miles into the hike, and I just haven't seen that much, but let me just show you kind of the scenery that I'm walking through. It's these giant old growth trees that they've done a controlled burn through. And so there are several just centuries old pine trees, kind of littered throughout littered is a bad word for it. But they're just all over the trail. I've seen a lot of grouse, which are these birds that when you get too close to them, they wish I had a selfie stick. Wouldn't that be great? They literally sound like a whole flock of birds are getting up to fly at one point. So I think about a half mile up, I'll get to a creek where I'll filter some water. And then I have to decide whether or not I carry on. El Cap is about 6 miles from now. It's about 3 hours of hiking, and a lot of it's uphill. I'm thinking I want to hike for at least another hour and a half today before finally camping. It's nuts to be out here. And also, I definitely feel the solitude of not being around people, which is an okay thing, but not my default operating system. So, I wanted to make a video or a update on the trail, and here we are. This is where I'm going to pump water. This is some creek, but this is the last water source that I have until the top of El Cap. So I'm going to sit right over there and get to it. Look at this. Is that not a prime spot if you needed it? So I found a place to set up camp. I think I'm still probably 3 miles from the top of El Cap. Ever since pumping water, it's been kind of a steady uphill. And the one person I saw on the trail said that today morning, at 9 o'clock, she saw 4 bears. Obviously this hat works really well because this is a test of confidence. Strangely enough, it's not wildlife that freaks me out the most. It's actually getting lost. There's been a couple times where the trail has been a little, not dicey, but more I don't really know where. And that actually gets me really nervous. But I'm glad I'm out here. It's a test. One of the prayers that I had over the last few months was on a Monday morning. I was driving into work and I just felt anxious. And the prayer was, God, teach me to need you. And I knew right at that point that it was one of those prayers that you're I don't know about that. But I prayed it. And I meant it. And this is a good way to do it. I didn't realize how out of my comfort zone this was. And ultimately, I can always turn back. And maybe I cut the backcountry stuff short, but we'll see. Still my plan to get up to the top of El Cap tomorrow. Definitely still camp there. But also I've had self-signal since Glacier Point, which is one of the videos that I did. So I haven't been able to check in with anybody. It's almost like I'm worrying for, like, my mom. It's very quiet. It's very quiet. It was a cold morning. It's a cold night. So I'm just tearing down camp. I had a tent there in that one flat space. Had a spot where, because it's supposed to get to like, it was somewhere between 20 and 30 degrees last night. And I managed to stay warm, but it was like kind of a game of like, am I warm? Or is this working or whatever? I lost some water last night because I had my bladder, because I was worried about the cold, where I lost some water because of like my foot ended up on the mouthpiece and let some water out of a bladder. So I probably lost at least half a liter of water that way, which is like super discouraging, especially since like that's like there's certainly no more water, so there's more water like 2 miles that way, but I'm 4 miles from El Cap. But I've essentially told myself that like I'm leaving wherever I am when I'm down to 1 liter of water, and I'm thinking that's gonna be, I was hoping initially to do 2 nights up on El Cap, but I don't have the water for that. And I have just about as much of a climb as I had in the last hour or so of the hike yesterday to do. And actually most of that probably before I update you. It was good. No bear encounters last night. I heard like some things kind of wandering around, but it was likely like a chipmunk or a marmot or Gandalf. Sitting here for coffee because I definitely felt a headache, which I didn't know whether it was because of, I don't think it would have been due to dehydration. I drank plenty. But I only had 1 cup of coffee yesterday, and I'm definitely a fiend. And it's possible it's also altitude sickness. I do go up another 700 some feet today. So I know better than to like push it if it's getting worse, but I took some Tylenol. Yeah, haven't had phone service for like a long time, so I'm hoping to have some on El Cap. But if I don't, that's fine. Right? It's fine. Right? Never mind, I'm still here drinking my camp coffee. I tried that like Four Sigmatic mushroom coffee. And then so I put like 10 ounces of water in it, and when I first had my first taste of it, I was just like, oh, this just doesn't really taste strong enough. So I actually put a whole, I have like the Four Sigmatic coffee, and then I have a pack of the Pike's Place, Starbucks. And like, I don't love Starbucks coffee, but there's something about a strong cup of coffee while you're out in the wild. But the reason I popped this on again is, I kind of sounded off on this last video with this little hesitation. And I also ultimately think that like leaving when I'm down to that last liter is definitely like the best call. I mean, I'll be thirsty by the time I get back to the water. Like right as I sounded off, all of a sudden there were some birds that showed up in vicinity of camp. But specifically they were sparrows. And as far as when you talk about God as a provider, there's like one story that always really like sticks out, or one verse or or something, but it's the one of the, like, consider the lilies of the field or the sparrows of the air. You know, God provides for them. Don't you think He's going to provide so much more for you? You are the pinnacle of His creation. I guess the challenge that comes is, what are we doing with that birthright as the pinnacle of God's creation? All right, so I've already hiked 20 minutes, but gained 200 feet in elevation. Just knocks you out when you've got a 50-pound pack. But the trail continues to go up. I should have about like 700 or 800 feet of climbing, so to get a good chunk of that out of the way right away is good. And I know that the next hour of hiking is definitely going to be like the rest. But I was really greeted with a really nice view, so I'll show you that now. That peak is at like 70-some hundred feet. Looks really cool. There's no trail to get up it, but I feel like it's just begging to be climbed. So my camp is down there, 200-some feet down. So probably looks like just under a half a mile. Kind of gnarly. Oh, and I should mention that I made this stop to take off my long underwear because it's going to be one of those days.